kick us off with a statistic. And last year, around 2,000 women under the age of 40 were diagnosed with breast cancer in the UK. Some men do get breast cancer, but obviously it's mostly women. And most of people diagnosed with breast cancer don't have any history of breast cancer in their family. These were things that I didn't know. I really thought that I wasn't at risk at all, and I didn't think it could happen to me, and then of course it did. And when I was diagnosed, I would have really liked to have met somebody who was where I am now, who could have made cancer a bit less scary and given me a bit of knowledge about cancer. And so that's why I'm here now, to talk to you about my breast cancer story. So this is me about a year and a half ago with some of my family. There I've got 3 daughters, 2 nieces and 1 husband. And I think when they say, oh, you have to look for a lump, I think I expected something hard and like a marble, like very definitely a lump. And it wasn't like that. It was what they call thickening. But now I know, and now you know as well, that anything like that can be breast cancer. And weirdly, I was feeling very good, feeling very healthy, and that is the nature of breast cancer as opposed to other cancers. You are healthy until they start treating you. And so in the last 18 months, I have been cut, poisoned and burnt. And for those of you fortunate enough not to know, that's surgery, chemotherapy and radiotherapy. So brace yourself. I'm just going to show you some of that through art therapy images. So I now have 1 breast and 1 implant. Hopefully you can't tell, but I only have 1. And I've been bald. I've experienced shocking fatigue and all sorts of pains and minor indignities and other illnesses too. There's been a lot of vomit. Not everybody's a big vomiter, but a lot of vomit. Then I spent 5 weeks every day coming in, having radiotherapy. That's lying underneath a machine that looks a bit like this. And then I had a year of Herceptin infusion. So that's where you go to the chemo ward and you sit on a drip every 3 weeks. And that just finished for me at the beginning of this year. So it's quite a long amount of treatment. And then some people have tablets for 5 years as well, but I didn't get those. So at its very worst, I just couldn't be a mother. I couldn't go to work and I couldn't just be me. And as far as I know, I am cancer-free. You never really know. But there's always a big chance that it could come back. So cancer and cancer treatment, it messes with your body, but it also messes with your mind. You really do have a lot to think about, and it changes your identity and takes away some of the certainties that you might have had being in your 30s about your life expectancy. In some ways, of course, it has been a living hell, but it's also been a beautiful learning experience. That's probably partly due to the fact that my family really stepped up and all the people around me really care for you and look after you, and they looked after my girls. I also got a year off work. Obviously, that's not all bad. And it did mean that I could just focus on getting well and slowing down and doing art therapy and just looking after myself. So there was some really positive stuff. But the main thing that really got me through was art and art therapy. And I'm not going to tell you that creativity cures cancer or that art and art therapy made all of this okay, because of course it didn't. But it really helped me to cope with the experience, and it made it meaningful for me and helped me connect up with other people. This picture I did a year after the surgery, and I think it's quite colourful and pretty, even though of course it shows disfigurement, and I've now put a copy of it on my wall as a memorial. And I think with art therapy it helped me to see something like mutilation to be beautiful. It looks kind of beautiful, no? Kind of. It's not everywhere you get to show pictures of your breasts, you know. So something magical happened for me in the art therapy group. It was a drop-in group that the hospital held at the Macmillan Centre. I did try the formal therapy where they, stare at you and wait for you to cry and interview you, which I know works for some people, but it just didn't really do it for me. But with the art therapy group, you don't have to put everything into words. You can just sit there and make a picture. It's a very different thing. So in this group, the only thing we had in common was a diagnosis of cancer. Could be any cancer. And we came together and we had such different backgrounds, different experiences, different cancers, different attitudes to our different cancers as well. And sometimes we would just sit there in silence, or sometimes we'd laugh or cry or talk about nothing, or sometimes something really important would happen. We'd talk about really important stuff, and we'd also drink a lot of tea. I think drinking tea is a very important sick thing. So this is a picture that I did fairly recently. Maybe it's me as a spider in the middle of my spider web, rebuilding my life, rebuilding myself. And there's 4 little spiders, and maybe they were the 4 little people who were also in the art therapy group with me. Sort of, maybe it's a healing mesh of community again. This is me in a gown. I developed a deep-seated hatred of the hospital gowns. I had to wear them quite often. And I don't know, they just have this industrial design, blue dots. They don't fit. They're just horrible. And so I drew quite a few of these hospital gowns. And even when I wasn't drawing hospital gowns, I noticed these blue dots were popping up in the pictures I was making. So they obviously really haunted me. And I think that's partly, it's the relationship with the hospital. You know, you're a professional woman who goes out and is quite able to look after themselves and do things, and then suddenly you just belong to the hospital and you've become institutionalised because of the gown and other things like it. And art therapy was at the hospital, but it really gave me some control over the experience, and it completely changed my relationship with the hospital. They didn't leave you waiting, they didn't make you get naked, they didn't inject you or hurt you in any kind of way, but it was all hospital and hospital treatment. The art therapy room was a kind of safe space as well, and the art therapist really helped you to feel safe. He made the tea, which was always really nice. He gave you the biscuits, and he also helped me to identify myself within it and to make patterns and do all those proper therapy things that you need to do, but without the scary therapy of staring at you. It was with cups of tea and drawing things. We were able to use any art materials that we wanted to. This was the first picture that I made, and I used everything. It's got acrylics and watercolours and pencils and charcoal and pastels, and I just used everything that was there. And I found that most of the people there hadn't done any drawing since they were at school. And this is quite common. I know a lot of you are artists, you're quite used to doing drawing, but people in their lives tend not to do drawing. So this was a hugely positive experience for us. For me, what made a huge difference is that you're doing this without any kind of judgment. It's not about making a good picture or a bad picture. It's not, I know I'm standing here now showing you these pictures, but that's not the point. The point is that it's in your therapy room and there's no judgment. It really doesn't matter. And I work in a university, so I've been it's the same with the vulnerability talk. I think at the university, it's very about critical theory, critical thinking. Everything is judged, everything is criticised. So this was hugely liberating for me. Cancer doesn't just happen to you, it happens to your family and it happens to everybody around you. And through drawing pictures, I was able to share the experience with other people in my life. You probably guessed this is a child. My daughter was 4 years old when she made this picture, and it's all her family, her and her sisters and us, and we're all bald. And for her, being bald means you have cancer. So for her, that was the whole family with cancer. My brother came to one of my art therapy sessions, and he drew this cocktail, or it could be a glass of poison. He was my chemotherapy buddy, and my art therapist liked to think the 2 straws meant it was me and him sharing in the poison together. But, you know, he enjoyed making a picture. And then my stepdad turned this picture of me bald into a drawing with pressed flowers. So now I have a whole body of work. I have images and photos and scans, cartoons. I have a memorial. I've got an illustrated story of what happened, so I can never forget what I learned. And I turned all of those pictures into a photo book. I've got a few copies here with me today if anybody wants to have a look at it. And I made it just for me, but I found that it was a really useful way of communicating to other people. As a friend of mine said recently, often what happens is somebody has cancer, they disappear, go off and have their treatment, and then they come back and you don't really know what to say to them. And I found that this book is a way to open that conversation and show them what happened and just talk about it a bit. And then I found that was also useful to other health professionals, other people that had been through cancer too. I have a few cancer buddies and they're all doing marathons this year. I'm not really a marathon running kind of girl, but there is an urge to do something useful afterwards, I've noticed. But my background's in educational development, as I say, I work in university, so it kind of makes sense for me to take these pictures, take this story, and start doing talks. And a lot of health professionals, they need to get their hands on the patient. They need to see insight into the patient experience. And they don't always have people they can get hold of to do that. So I've done quite a few talks. I've talked to physiotherapists to help them refer others to art therapy. This was a Macmillan volunteer group. I made them all wear those horrible, horrible gowns so they could feel how horrible it was, and it was horrible. And I've also been talking to a few groups of student nurses, and I'm going to do some more as well. So at the first talk I did with the student nurses, we asked them, what's the first thing you think of when you think of cancer? And somebody immediately said, death. And I wonder, maybe that's the first thing I thought of when I first heard the word cancer. But I think after spending an hour with me, they didn't start thinking of death and sickness quite so much. I mean, obviously cancer is going to kill people and death is a big part of it. But for me, and for quite a few other people that I've met, having cancer is a chance to live again. It's a chance to live and do crazy things like standing here talking to a load of people about your experience. And it was a chance to connect with people and be creative and slow down. And, you know, maybe it's another life. That's it. Thanks.